Yo, what's up boys? It's Betta-ah here with my Spark Inquisitor League starter build guide for 3.18 Sentinel. So, this build takes advantage of stacking up a high amount of critical strike chance and multiplier in order to deliver powerful sparks to clear your screen without any worries. Of course, we cannot just be a glass cannon, so we do take advantage of some form of defenses. And in terms of defenses, we have around about 80% physical mitigation, along with a 75% chance to block attack damage and a 75% chance to block spell damage. Obviously, this build requires zero budgets in order to get set up for your early maps and that. However, once you do get into yellow maps or so, you would want to invest into projectile clusters, which will not be expensive as not many builds take advantage of them. So your budget that you'll be looking at will be between 50 chaos to around about 100 chaos, maybe an exalt or 2 exalts. It just depends on pretty much who's playing what at league start. However, I'm pretty confident that they won't be that expensive. The build, of course, does take advantage of using 2 Call of the Brotherhoods in order to convert our lightning damage to cold damage, to freeze everything on screen, so we are able to be a lot safer while mapping, and this allows us to juice up our maps then, so we can further gain more currency out of our maps and that stuff as well. This build I would not recommend for bossing, however. It does take quite a while to do bosses, but you can get them killed. The only thing is that you will have maybe 1, 2, or 3 deaths, depending on how rippy your maps and that are. However, it is an absolute blast to play, and I leveled it up from scratch all the way through the acts, which was an absolute breeze. I had so much fun, and then getting into maps as well, just clearing the screen was absolutely amazing. As you can see right now, I mean, we take advantage of Rampage as well, so we're extra speedy. If you'd like, you can also take advantage of the Atlas nodes for Delve, for the extra movement speed and cast speed and that as well, which is super potent. And then what this build cannot do is the endgame bosses and that stuff in its current budget state, obviously. However, once you do invest into it further, then you will be able to do any content in the game. Down below in the description, I will have a budget path of building with all of the leveling trees for you, and then I'll have a juiced up version as well, should you want to take the build further into the endgame content and stuff. Right, so let's jump on in and have a look how you level the build then. But should this build appeal to you, then smack that subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified on my latest videos or live streams that I do right here on YouTube. Also, consider hitting the like button in hopes of reaching more exiles. So, in terms of leveling up the build, it is very simple. In each of the path of buildings, as you can see here under the notes section, I have got each of the acts broken down as simple as possible without trying to complicate anything for you. So you can just use this as a reference while going through all of the acts. And then once you get to maps, then I highly recommend that you should follow the budget path of building, get your gems sorted and that stuff, and pretty much just try and get your block chance up and your auras and that sorted. But we'll get into that now. So for Act 1, you'll want Spark linked to added lightning damage and pierce. And then you'll want Flame Dash linked to Flame Wall and Arcane Surge. You must keep your Arcane Surge at level 3. You can level it up to level 4 as well. Doesn't really make that much of a difference. And then Orb of Storms must be linked to Onslaughts. And then you must make sure to pick up a Holy Flame Totem, and then Clarity 2, and then a Molten Shell, which you should put on your left click button. This will be used all the way through into maps and then endgame and so forth. So how you deal your damage, right, is that you place down your Orb of Storms and then your Flame Wall. You must make sure that the Orb of Storms is on the bosses. This is only for bosses, by the way. This isn't for for clearing through the acts. This is only for bosses. So yeah, Orb of Storms down first, Flame Wall in front of you, and then you want to spam your sparks into the Flame Wall so they gain that extra damage from Flame Wall. And then you must use your Holy Flame Totem on bosses to bait them out, especially on Brutus, because Spark feels a bit clunky, and you want to basically be standing there, casting as many as possible to get the most damage. Right, moving on to Act 2, the very first thing that you want to do when you do get into Act 2 is to buy a Jade Amulet and a Heavy Belt. This is in order to bring up our attribute requirements for our dexterity and our strength mainly, which we will need at a later stage. Then you'll want Spark linked to faster casting instead of added lightning damage, along with PS once again. And then Orb of Storms, you must link to the added lightning damage with Onslaught again. And then once you're around about level 16 or so, then you should pick up your Herald of Thunder from the quest reward and then go buy a Herald of Ice and run those along with your Clarity. Right. Once you do get into Act 3, you will have to do the library quest. This is in order so you can pick up Pinpoint and your Wave of Conviction. So you'll want Spark linked to faster casting, yes, and Pinpoint then, along with your Wave of Conviction to apply exposure to the enemies. This is mainly only for bosses, once again, which you'll use in combination with your Orb of Storms, Flame Wall, and your Holy Flame Totem. Then for your auras, you'll want to use Determination, Clarity, and Herald of Thunder. Now you will want to probably drop Herald of Ice as well, as it's no longer necessary, because by now you'll have picked up the aura nodes in the tree. And then once you reach level 28, you'll want to do the vendor recipe. This is in order to gain wands that have flat added lightning damage to spells. In order to gain these wands, you will need 2 magic wands and 2 topaz, ruby, or sapphires that are at least rare or magic. However, if they are rare, then the roll will be higher. I do recommend that you should probably get 2 topaz rings, as it gives added lightning. This will give a lot more damage than the fire and the cold. Obviously, if you do fall short, then you can use a ruby or a sapphire. There is no problem there. Right, so what you'll want to do for this vendor recipe is you'll want to sell 1 magic wand along with 1 of the rings and an orb of alteration. This will give you the weapon with flat added lightning damage to spells, or fire or cold, corresponding to which ring you use, obviously. Alright, then for Act 4, the only change is that you'll want to swap out your faster casting for Spell Echo once you get to the end of the act. And then you'll want to pick up Lightning Golem as well for the extra cast speed, and just keep him up pretty much all the time for that extra cast speed. Right, and then from Act 4, you don't have to do anything else that's drastic in that. You can just speed your way through the acts without problem. And then should you need resistances, right, then I recommend that you can disable your Herald, and then you can use Purity of Elements instead. But I don't think that that resistances should be a problem, because from Act 2 you unlock the crafting bench. You can just craft on some low resistances and you'll be pretty much golden. And then once you get into maps, or well, at the end of Act 10, early mapping and that, you should path down and get glancing blows along with Sanctuary, and then to pick up a shield. Any shield will do, as long as it's just got some life. Maybe even an extra block chance will be fantastic as well. There is pretty much, you know, it's self-explanatory why this is a good thing. And then you'll be rather tanky. Obviously you're not going to be able to face tank everything, but I mean, you know, you will be able to get the job done. Right, before the clusters, however, you can drop Herald of Ice or your Zealotry, and then run Herald of Thunder in order to fit in your auras. Right, moving on, in terms of your gear priority, you will want to get the shield and the block nodes first, obviously. That's very important. And then you should try and pick up a 5 or even a 6-link body armor as soon as possible. This is so that you can socket in your inspiration and then increase critical strikes as well. Obviously, with the 5-link is inspiration first. If you do manage to get the 6-link body armor, then critical strikes as well. Then you should focus on getting your wand and then your Call of the Brotherhood rings. However, you shouldn't focus on these too much too soon. If they're too expensive, then obviously you can just get the Brutal Restraint first and then move on to getting the clusters. Alright, moving on to our skill tree and our Ascendancy. Let's just cover our Ascendancy first. So for your normal lab, you'll want to pick up Righteous Providence for the Strength and Intelligence, and then the Critical Strike chance, obviously. And then for your Cruel lab, you'll want to pick up Sanctuary. This is so that you have Consecrated Ground around you, just for the extra regeneration on that. For Merciless lab, I highly recommend that you should pick up Pierce Path first, or you can pick up Inevitable Judgment for the extra damage as your critical strikes ignore elemental resistances. I would probably pick this up first, and then I will get Pierce Path, as getting into yellow maps is when you really need that extra recovery from the Consecrated Ground. So, to break down the skill tree, obviously we have Glancing Blows and Sanctuary for the block chance on that, and then we're using a Brutal Restraint here. This is to give us Dexterity, as the build is Dexterity starved. This is a must-have, especially once you've acquired your Call of the Brotherhood rings and that. It is a definite must-have. And then we just pick up some elemental damage here as well. Some elemental leech, along with some more defense, and then our reservation nodes, of course. We also get a little bit of a spell critical strike chance, critical multiplier over here as well with Annihilation, Arcane Potency paired together. And then we also pick up some cast speed and lightning damage. Some more cast speed over here once again with mental rapidity. And then we pick up Mystic Bulwark. Obviously, this gives us our mana regeneration that we require. As you can see, I've only got 58 mana, and that mana regeneration helps out a lot, along with the extra spell block chance too. Otherwise, pretty much all what we're doing is we're just picking up some life and mana around the tree. Nothing too serious here. And then, of course, we are also getting some skill effect duration, just so our sparks last a little bit longer on the screen. And then some effects of, this is mostly for shock and for our chills. A little bit of life regeneration there. And then a hazardous research, of course. However, you do not need this jewel to have corrupted blood on it. You can replace it with just a normal rare one that has corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. This is just more so for when you're getting into those red maps. The spread of the projectiles helps out a lot more. And then moving on to our clusters, all that we have here is Snowstorm, Storm Rider, and Widespread Destruction. The Widespread Destruction is just for elemental damage. Storm Rider is probably the most important thing on this cluster, as it gives us a chance to gain a power charge when you shock a chilled enemy, and because we are always chilling enemies, we will always be gaining power charges. Right, and then of course you can also pick up Snowstorm, but it's not really necessary. It will give you like 5% extra damage, not too serious. And then for our medium cluster jewels, what you'll want is R2R and Repeater. And the reason why you want R2R and Repeater is because it gives a large amount of projectile damage. And also we gain some extra cast speed, which is fantastic too. And then what you will want is to pick up a Replica Conqueror's Efficiency. For the non-challenging skills have -9 to total mana cost. This is not 100% required. However, it does make it a lot smoother while mapping, so I do recommend that you do pick it up. And it also gives us some skill effect duration as well, which is a bonus. And then of course is our small cluster jewel here with Righteous Path and Reservation Efficiency. This is so that we can run all of our auras without worrying about not having enough mana, obviously. Right, so now let's move on to the gear then. So for our gear, you will want to use either a scepter or a wand as your main hand weapon with lightning damage to spells. Fast speed is a bonus, and then lightning damage is also a bonus, and then some critical strike chance to spells, and then +1 to level of all lightning spell skill gems. You should prioritize getting the level of all spell skill gems and flat lightning damage to spells. Otherwise, all of the other ones is just pretty much a bonus. They are not a must-have. However, it does give you a significant boost in damage. Okay, moving on to our rings, of course, is 2 Call of the Brotherhoods. I expect these to be around about 30 to 40 chaos within the first 3 days of the league, I think it is. They could be cheaper, maybe more expensive. It does depend on the demand of them. But yeah, these are to convert your lightning damage to cold damage, and then obviously so that you have 100% shock to 100% shock chance against the frozen enemies. And as a bonus, it gives us some extra lightning damage too. In order to make these a lot better, you should use the elemental catalysts to further improve the amount of lightning damage converted to cold damage. They do tend to be a bit expensive early on, and it's not a must-have, but it is for that extra quality of life of getting some extra cold damage, obviously. Right, moving on to the amulet, I'm using a Choir of the Storm with the Anointment long shot for the projectile speed and the extra damage as our projectiles travel further. This is a huge boost in damage, actually, and it's really, really cheap early on, and you should get it on your amulet as soon as you can. Obviously, getting the Choir of the Storm is not necessary, but it does give a large amount of lightning damage, and obviously the main part of using this amulet is for the lightning bolt, and the critical strike chance is increased by overcapped lightning resistance. Obviously, you don't have to go and overcap your lightning resistance like a crazy person, because that's not really that necessary. This is just more so for the extra lightning damage and that, and just gives some extra quality of life. And then, right, for our helmet, you'll pretty much want any helmet that has got the enchantment Spark fires 3 additional projectiles. Early on, obviously, this is not realistic and it's not a must-have, and the build doesn't suffer without it, so you don't need to really stress. Otherwise, all you need is just quite a couple of resistances here and life, and then obviously for the implicits, you can use any Searing Exarch or Eater World ones that you'd like. Over here, I just threw on them randomly, and I managed to hit cold damage to spells and spell damage, which is pretty cool. But yeah, you can pretty much use anything that you'd want. And then moving on to the chest, what you'll want is anything with a high amount of life and some resistance as well. The strength and the intelligence on this is not necessary. I just got really lucky with throwing an essence on it, obviously. And then you must have an open prefix, so you can craft on the gain 10% of maximum life as extra maximum energy shield. Because we are hybrid, this gives us a huge amount of energy shield, actually. And then for our gloves, we're using Shadows and Dust, obviously, for the Rampage. And the extra global critical strike chance and multiplier is super solid. I expect these gloves to be really, really cheap early on, and you should not struggle to get them early on either. Then moving on to the belt, you'll want one which has got increased flask charges gained, maybe some life regen and some resistances. However, should you not be able to acquire that, then a crystal belt or even any belt, as a matter of fact, with some energy shield, life, and resistances will be super solid early on too. You don't need to really stress about that at all. And then moving on to the boots, obviously you need a Void Walker. The reason why Void Walker is super powerful is because if you've killed recently, then you have phasing. And if you have phasing, then all of your projectiles, and in this instance, Spark is a projectile, it will pierce enemies 5 times. This helps out with our clear speed a lot in that. Obviously, the lab enchantment that is on here, the increased attack and cast speed if you killed recently, is not a must-have, and it is pretty unrealistic for me to have it on right now. But yeah, it's just to give you guys an idea of what to shoot for. And then lastly, for the shield, what you'll want is anything that has got pretty much armor or energy shield on it, and some life, maybe in the extra block chance. However, that's not necessary. And then Life regeneration as well will be super solid, but the main thing that you want on your shield is life gained when you block. This is just to give you that extra bit of survivability early on. Obviously, once you're into red maps and you've got around about an Exalt or so, then you can just buy an Aegis Aurora and, you know, then you're pretty much golden. Right, so that is the gear covered. There is nothing else too serious to mention. Right, in terms of our skill gems, we run a Vol Righteous Fire. This is for the extra spell damage on bosses. And then Arcane Surge linked to Flame Dash. This is for the more spell damage it provides us with. And then we have a Sniper's Mark linked to Mark on Hit. This is for the extra projectiles in that, once again. So they can split, and then just to gain some extra life flask charges. But that's not really relevant, because even when we're getting hit, we are regening and that, so there's no need to worry. And then I'm running a Frost Bomb. This is for bosses, obviously, to apply the cold exposure. And then Temper Shield for the extra spell block chance. Pretty much this is where all of our spell block comes from. And then also for the immunity to shock, which is very, very powerful. Then we run a Wrath linked to Life Tap and Divine Blessing. This is in order to have a 5th aura then. Pretty much what you'll want to do is to just tap it and you'll regen your life back. Or you can just quickly tap the life potion and then you'll be right back up. This just gives us the extra lightning damage. The more spell lightning damage, sorry. And then moving on, we use a Blood Rage. This is in order for us to generate Frenzy charges for the extra cost speed and that, which is a huge quality of life when clearing. And then the Defiance Banner, obviously, for increased armor, evasion rating, and reduced critical strike chance that enemies deal. And then moving on, we have our Molten Shell, obviously. This is just for the extra armor and for the extra mitigation that it gives us. Obviously, you can use a Vol Molten Shell as well, but that's just an extra button to press. It's not really that much of a big difference. And then we have our Lightning Golem once again for the extra cast speed, nothing too special there. And then our Orb of Storms again for the extra damage while bossing. You just place it down and spam your sparks while in it, and while the boss is in it as well. Then we have Herald of Ice. This is to give us extra spell cold damage, but more so in order to shatter all of the enemies, which gives us our satisfying clear speed and explosions, I guess you can say. And then we have Determination for the armor once again here. This is really, really powerful. And then we run a Zealotry as well for more spell damage and spell critical strike chance. The Consecrated Ground does not matter because we already get that from our Ascendancy. Right. So, in conclusion, I highly recommend that you should give this build a try. I absolutely loved playing this build. It was an absolute blast for me. And even when you juice up the build and you decide to do endgame content, you'll see that it is a super solid build to play. I didn't have many issues with the build. I think the only issues that I ended up having was earlier on I was dying quite a few times. But that's probably because I was pushing the build into yellow maps when I was like level 64 or something crazy. I don't recommend doing that. Anyways, guys, moving on to the flasks just quickly. You'll want immunity to chill and freeze, and then immunity to poison, ignite removal as well, and then any critical strike chance on any other flasks, and then immunity to bleeding as well. I would recommend that you have the prefix over here, whereby you gain charges when you are hit by an enemy, and then to have the used when charges reach full on them, so that each time you are hit, your flasks are just being auto-used, as everyone likes to call it, fake blood also. It is really, really powerful, and you don't have to flask piano or anything. Super, super smooth. But yeah, I think I've pretty much covered everything, and yeah. Otherwise, guys, should you have enjoyed this bold guide on that, then you should subscribe to my channel, as I release bold guides often in that, and I stream right here on YouTube too. And you should come swing by sometime and join in on the action. We always have a lot of fun in that. And also be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. And then, yeah, I will see you guys in the next guide. Thanks for watching, Exile.